What is up, guys? It is Spooky Spooter here, making another story time video here, just because not a lot's been going on lately, and there's a lot of stories that I kind of want to tell you guys. And this one's pretty spicy. I'm not gonna lie. This one is pretty taboo because has to do with playing RuneScape on the job. And so, really, for anyone that's new to these storytime videos, these are just videos where I go into stories about RuneScape and how it's either affected my life or the events that have surrounded my life with RuneScape. And not a lot really from a video perspective. It's just me AFKing in the background. There is a pylon event coming up shortly, so I'm just hanging out here trying to get those elusive staff pieces. So let's kind of dive into this because this is a pretty fun one. So basically, so when I started kind of replaying RuneScape again, the only time I've really taken a pretty large break was from 2012, just probably like a lot of people with EOC's release, to about 2013, 2014. I briefly came back for Divination, but then I stopped playing until about 2014. But so in 2014, I was working my hospital job. I was working in an ICU, so in an intensive care unit, as a patient care technician. So for anyone that's wondering, a patient care technician is pretty much a like a glorified CNA or a certified nurse's assistant. Basically, what you do is you go around, you help nurses out with kind of the grunt work. Just to be blatantly honest, any other CNA or PCT would probably agree. You're stuck kind of either running, getting stuff for the nurses. You are running down to the labs. You are drawing blood if you have the license to do so. And of course, the worst part is cleaning a lot of nasty stuff. So, I'll let your imagination kind of leave that up to you. If you guys are interested in, maybe I'd do a separate YouTube channel for this, but just kind of talking about work stories. Maybe I could put that on this channel. I don't know. But let me know in the comments if that's something that you guys would be interested in. It's some crazy, hospital stories. So let's basically, so in when I worked as a patient care technician, I'd be on my feet, pretty much for 12 hours. That's how long your shifts are, is for 12 hours. And there wasn't really a lot of ways to really be around the computer. If you were a nurse, you're allowed to, because you only have two patients, you sit outside their rooms and you have visibility, or you could see in between both of those rooms at your desk. So as a PCT, we didn't really get that luxury. Otherwise, I'd just be playing RuneScape on the computer, right? And so I remember one of the very first times that this happened, I was like, oh my god, this is the best thing ever. So there's two ways that I pretty much went about playing RuneScape at work. So I'll explain kind of how it went. The first one was the ideal option, and that was so sometimes as a healthcare worker, they didn't. There's these things called sitter cases where you would have there's patients that need to be watched at all times, and I work the night shifts. So the night shift, really, you'd basically your patient would eat dinner and then they'd pretty much go to bed. But this could be for a numerous of different things. Like if they were a danger to themselves, is usually just the main reason behind it, or maybe if they just needed a lot of help. So when you were a sitter case, though, you got the luxury of having something called a WOW, or what they call a workstation on wheels. And a workstation on wheels is basically, it's like it's a full desktop computer, right? But that's literally like a standing station that you can move around. It's mobile, right? It rolls around on wheels. And so we would get one of these that we can put in the room with us while we do our charting, which is just simply putting in the medical documentation of kind of what's going on with the patient at the time. So I so I remember the very first time I got assigned to do a sitter case. The main rule with the sitter case is you need to have your eyes on the patient pretty much at all times. So I was able to do that by essentially putting myself in a way, because you don't want people to see that you're playing games while you're doing sitter cases, but everyone, the main thing is that you just need to be awake. If you fall asleep, of course you're done, so you're fired, you're gone, right? But you need to be keeping focus on the patient, and then you need to other than that, just stay awake. So anything that can occupy your brain is seen as a plus. So people would either listen to music. A lot of people would be like studying for nursing school. And so, of course, for myself, I want to entertain myself with RuneScape. And like I said, this is pre RuneScape Mobile. This was in 2014, all the way through 2017. So basically, but like I said, so with these workstation on wheels, thank goodness that they're mobile, because even like if you were a stationary desk, people would be like coming up and looking at what you're doing, and that's something that obviously would ruin being able to play RuneScape at work. So what I would do is I would try to get like in a corner of the room where I had and these wows where you got to be able to move them up and down as far as like height goes, so that you can have them while you're standing or when you're sitting. So I had it low enough so that the screen, I could peer over it really easily, and just keep all eyes on the patient through that entire time, while also being able to get RuneScape up and playing that as well. So the way that I knew for at least the first couple years I was able to play via the browser, while that was still supported. Now it's of course no longer supported. You have to download RuneScape. But there was a way that I got past that eventually as well. But man, this was the best way of because like I said, it was like basically 12 hours of getting paid to play RuneScape. That's the the fact of the matter. It was amazing. I mean, so around that time I was working towards max, and a lot of my progress was made through that as well. I remember there was one time that I actually had to work a double XP weekend, and I was depressed because my normal job, when you're not doing the sitter case, you're so busy. You're running back and forth, you're helping out 16 different nurses. It's crazy, right? You don't really get a moment to even sit down. So I was like, oh man, I got to work this weekend. There's no way that you can call off. It just wasn't a good time. And I remember I came in and they needed a sitter case, and I was like, oh my god, this is the best. I got to, I think, knocked out 99 crafting. It was amazing. This was, like I said, maxing on my main account before I really started my Iron Man. So yeah, so that was the first way of doing XP gains from work, right? So the second way was a bit more interesting. What I did was, so I remember I used essentially TeamViewer, right? At its core, it's just TeamViewer. But how do you really make TeamViewer work from your phone effectively at a job where you're walking around constantly? So what I did is I tried to find essentially AFK activities. The best thing that I pretty much worked on was crafting. So crafting at harps on my Iron Man, because this was about a year or so later. But so I remember I set up TeamViewer on my computer so that, and for anyone that doesn't know what TeamViewer is, it's just a remote desktop app where you can look at your computer, your home computer, from another device, another computer or a phone. And the only downside with this is that it was extremely laggy. There was a lot of delay, so you didn't want to really do anything that required a lot of movement. So things that like rune crafting at RuneSpan would be perfect. Like I said, harps would be another perfect idea. Just anything that was like minimal clicking would be the best. So what I did is I would set up TeamViewer, and every time I came in, I would pretty much um basically be on my phone every 2 minutes, is because that's usually how long the harps lasted, and also so that you didn't get lobbied as well. But I would pretty much go around just doing my job, and then just opening, taking my phone out of my pocket every 2 minutes, which looks kind of sketchy over the course of 2 hours. Of course, there was times where I just couldn't because I was so busy, or there's priorities going on at the time where you can't really do that. But the moments that I could, I definitely took advantage of it. So I got a lot. I'd say probably out of that 12 hours, I'd still get probably about 5 or 6 hours of full, like, actual progress within that time. So, but yeah, it would just be basically, trying to sneak my phone away just so that people couldn't see what you're doing. You can't like hide what RuneScape looks like. It looks like a game. So because like being on your phone in the hospital, as even like if you guys have been there, you always hear the nurses like say like you can't be on your phone here because they're worried about like breaking HIPAA, which is a compliance to not reveal patient information. You can, we were also on our phones. We just obviously couldn't take pictures of patients or patient information. That's still something, of course, to this day. So I always remember like nurses, whenever you'd see like family in the hallways or friends of patients on their phones, they'd be like, "Hey, get off your phone or go out to the lobby if you want to be on your phone or need to make calls." Even though we had all, like, every nurse would be on their phone, so it's kind of hypocritical. But basically, yeah, I would always just be trying to just discreetly open up my phone. So I just try to find things that like were away from people, so I didn't have to keep shoving my phone in my pocket, taking it out, unlocking it, right, and dealing with that. And then on my when I knew I'd be busy, I'd always be trying to like charge my phone because using TeamViewer just sucked down your battery as well. So basically from that point on, that's what I essentially did to get a lot of progress on my account. Depending on the activity, it was either better or worse. Like, I mean, chopping ivy was another good one for easy AFK woodcutting XP. But yeah, so those were probably the two biggest ways that I was able to play RuneScape from work. At my new job, that I've been working at for the last couple of years. It's an office job, so it's a lot easier to just play as long as you're getting your job done. That's kind of like an okay thing. I guess they don't really approve you just like having it like as a secondary monitor. You can't really just like do bossing or anything like that. I'd still say like RuneScape Mobile would probably be the best way to do it. Just so that you're not looking pretty suspicious, I guess. Even then, like, people will still come over because they'll come over and like pop into your cube all the time, and like, you're just, it's like the one time that you're like checking, like just to tap on your screen for a second. It's like, oh, what are you doing? Why you're holding your screen, your phone like that? Because you only hold your phone like that when you're either like watching videos or like playing games. There's no other way that you're holding your phone horizontally. So anyways, I thought that this would be kind of an interesting video to talk on. I remember, actually, you know what, before we kind of close out, I wanted to actually talk about one of the times I think because I'm sure I got caught a couple times. One time I 100% sure did. So we'll go into those, actually. So the first time that I kind of got caught, one of my nurses that I was working with, he was more kind of like a friend, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But once again, I remember like setting up, he had a sitter case, and it was on my unit anyways. So I was able to move myself to the back of the room, so I had to make it so that he couldn't see what I was doing, but I could still see the patient. So I remember just kind of being like in the back corner of the room. And I remember, he like came in, I don't know, he's just like, oh man, like, what are you doing? Like, playing some like Minecraft or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, dude, like I just wanted him to kind of go with that. And it wasn't that big of a deal. He's just like, just kind of laughed it off. So that one was pretty good. These other two, Probably not so good. I remember there was one time that I had to sit outside of a room because the patient didn't feel comfortable with, some man being in the room. Totally understand it. I wouldn't want someone just kind of sitting in there, but the protocol, just to keep the patient safe, said that there had to be a sitter. So I had to sit outside the room, and the way that one worked, unfortunately, you're in the hallway at that point, which means a lot of people can kind of, there's a lot of nurses walking around, a lot of staff and family. So there wasn't a lot of good ways to angle myself that no one could see what I was doing. So what I would just kind of do is flick my screen open, so that I would just do something and then turn it off and flick it back open when I needed to do something. And I remember one of the times that I was like either banking or doing something that just took a little extra time. Of course, the family member comes out. It's like 2 a.m. Like I said, I work night shift. So, and I was like, oh man, and they could totally see what I was doing. And they actually like called me on it too. They're just like, oh, why are you, like, you're not supposed to be playing games, or whatever. And I'm just like, hey, well, pretty much I'm just supposed to be able to stay awake and do things that preoccupy me so that I don't fall asleep just looking at blank walls or people sleeping like a weirdo. And I was able to kind of justify it like that. I'm sure it didn't go down very well. I wasn't being rude by any stretch. I was trying to be as polite as possible. But I remember that one I'm like, oh crap, this isn't good. The second time, or the third time, so there was a recent kind of change in policy with how working or sitter cases would be. They wanted a lot more focus on. They wanted a lot more focus on, of course, watching the patients, the most critical thing that you should be doing as a sitter. So what they did is they kind of started like babysitting us. They would send up people to check on us and report, how things are going, and, just basically just to see if you were doing anything wrong. Is just pretty lame. It completely like ruined my, XP plans at the time. But it was like a few weeks after that it kind of started cooling down, but they were still sending people up to check on you. And there would be no warning, right? It was just like they just come up, see what you're doing, and then make an assessment off of that. So for what I did, my job wasn't to do that, right? My job wasn't to be a sitter. There was actually specified people that their job every day is sitters. So, that would have been the best, actually, if I just had signed up for that, assuming everything was okay. But basically, I remember I was like decked out. Like it was like probably about 3 a.m. So my patient was asleep. And I was doing like Slayer, like active stuff, like like no nurses were bothering me. It was the best. So I was like doing Slayer. I think like I was on my phone, like on YouTube or whatever. And of course, that's when she comes up, the main lady that was monitoring all the sitters. And I remember like I was like, oh shit, like I'm like I'm screwed. So she comes up and she's just like, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. This isn't a way that we need to be sitters. And I just remember just trying to justify it, just like I said before. It's like, hey, I'm just trying to do something that keeps my brain active and engaged so that I'm able to stay awake. I, would not want to fall asleep. And this is just something that it's kind of passive to do while watching the patients. And she's like, well, you know what? That's not what we do anymore. We need to be eyes on the patient through the, for 12 hours straight. That is it. No more like, computers or, be on your phone, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, look, hey, my job, and I kind of came off like this was a little bit disrespectful and kind of, an asshole move, I guess, in hindsight. But I was just like, hey, what? My job is to be a patient care technician. you guys pull me when you guys are low staffed to do this so that you guys have coverage. This is the way that I'm trying to stay awake. And because she tried to pull the like, well, if you don't like the job, then you might as well quit. This is what the job is, so deal with it. And I would totally understand that if I signed up and there's like, hey, you can't be on the computer, you can't be on your phone. This is what it is. Very critical role. Totally understand that. But there was a different perception of it when I started, and then also too that they would just my job title didn't say I had to do this. This was something that the hospital would pull when you needed it. So and like I said, I was like a 20-year-old asshole. Like I was just like, okay, whatever. And then kind of wasn't as excited to do those sitter cases going forward, just because I wasn't able to really kind of delve into it. But yeah, so that time I'm like, oh man, I'm screwed. But I kind of defended myself, and because pretty much after she brought that up to me and I came back with my rebuttal, she just kind of she's just like, well, we'll have to see about that then, just like about using us as sitters going forward. And I just tell you again by accident. Okay, so I'm trying to think. So as far as other times that I got either caught, playing RuneScape at work, I don't really think so. Because like I said, going forward, at my job after, no one really cared too much, as long as you're getting your work done. So yeah, I guess we'll wrap this video up here. I thought this would be an interesting video for you guys. I don't know if any of you guys are crazy out there trying to get those XP gains at work in a crazy manner like myself. But yeah, hope you guys all have a great rest of your day, and let me know if you guys what your stories are down in the comments. But if you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for checking out my video, and stay tuned for the next one.